Let's dive into your healthcare paradigm. And your healthcare paradigm might not be anything you've ever thought of before, but it is something that is very, very important to think about as we approach different parts of our process, right? Because I get asked all the time, like, what should I do to get healthy? Should I do this diet or should I do that diet or should I aim for this or what? And that ultimately is our healthcare paradigm. And when we can put together a proper plan, then everything is much, much easier, right? Because just like anything else in life, if we don't have a plan, we're just taking shots in the dark, and it may work, it may not. It may lead us closer to our goal, it may not. It depends if you're taking the right steps to get you to those actual goals. So having this plan is a very, very important part of things. I'm Dr. Jeff Cumro, and ultimately what we do is we work to build brain function, we work to build body function, and then we work to supply the energy to connect those areas and supply those areas so that no matter what area or no matter what type of environment you're in, you can pull the things that you need to get the outcome that you want. So if you're in a learning environment, you're going to be able to learn more easily. If you're in an athletic or a career type of environment, you can pull the things you need to push yourself to get to that goal. If you're in an environment where you're trying to sleep, you're going to be able to relax the body and fall asleep and stay asleep more appropriately. So let's dive into this. So this is something that I think is very, very important. It's something that I don't think a lot of people have, but it's a goal or it's actually a plan to look at your goals and say, these are the things that I want to be able to do. And it's important to be able to look into the future on this and say, when I'm 50 years old, I want to be able to do these things. When I'm 75 years old, I want to be able to do these things. When I'm 100 years old, I want to be able to do these things. And then we can put together the plan that we need to get us to that goal. For example, if you want to, be able to pick up your grandkid or your great-great-grandkids or whatever they are when you're 100 years old, you're going to have to be able to pick up 20, 30 pounds, right? So we have to be able to have a plan to keep or build enough strength to pick up 20 to 30 pounds for that type of longevity, right? So this is something that is important, and it takes time to elucidate. What do I want out of life? What do I expect to reach? What are my overall goals, and where do I think I will be? And that's going to help you. But we have to look at other things. So we have to look at brain function. And these are the things we're going to dive into. We have to look at nutrition. We have to look at sleep. And then we have to look at, what's the other one? Energy. And there's one paradigm that fits all of this stuff really, really well. There's other healthcare paradigms that do not fit this as well, and we're going to dive into that. So let's go ahead and look at nutrition first. When we look at nutrition, lifestyle matters, right? So in the energy, I should denote that we're going to talk about fitness too. So strength and all of that is going to fall within this. So when we look at nutrition, everybody, what's the best diet? I get asked that all the time, and I don't know that there is a perfect diet out there. The ones that are really, really good are very difficult to sustain for long periods of time. So in my opinion, when we look at this, we have to look at, what is going to supply you with the nutrients you need. There's underlying things that may work better for you, but it doesn't really matter because we don't have to look at it that deep, right? We can look at things like the Mediterranean diet where you're getting the omega-3s that you need. You're getting better cuts of meat, you're getting fruits, you're getting vegetables, you're minimizing those bad things like the desserts and sweets and different things like that. You're minimizing those bad oils and whatnot. So there are certain diets that are going to be better than others, but finding one that works for you and gets you the high quality nutrition that you need is going to be paramount. Some people do better with certain types of food. I have found that I don't do well at all if I have dairy, if I have gluten, if I have corn. They just wreck me. My brain doesn't work right, my body doesn't work right, my stomach, just nothing works the way that it's supposed to. I don't feel good when I'm on that because ultimately what it is doing is increasing inflammation. So find one that decreases your inflammation. And this may take you a while. Like, I know a lot of people that say, my gut's not a problem. And then we do a food intolerance test, and they've got all sorts of intolerances in there. And they start taking all of those foods that are inflaming them out, and they're like, man, I didn't realize how bad I felt until I took all of that stuff out. So resetting some of this is going to be a very, very important part on the nutrition side of things, right? And this can be difficult. I know that this can be difficult. I took out 31 foods out of my diet at the same time, and it sucks, okay? There's no way around it, but sometimes we just have to do those difficult things to get ourselves to move forward. So if you have questions on that, by all means, like drop them in the comments, get a hold of me, and let's look at what can it be for you. But if we have a diet that's increasing inflammation, it's going to lead to immune activation. It's going to lead to allergies or irritation or different things like that. If you're eating your inflammation, the easiest way to get it out is to stop eating that. And when we have that increase in inflammation, we have an increase in breakdown as well. Degeneration of brain, of muscles, joints, nerves, all of that stuff. So it's going to be kind of applicable to the rest of this stuff as well. So this is a very, very important part. When we talk about the fitness community says, it's 80% diet and 20% fitness. So even people that are focused on exercise will tell you diet is where you have to put your biggest focus on that. Now, is that the biggest focus in healthcare? It's among them, but all of this together makes up your lifestyle, and your lifestyle is ultimately king in all of this. When we talk about sleep, this is a difficult one, right? Because a lot of people say, I sleep fine, but they don't realize that they snore really loudly. They don't realize that they have sleep apnea. They don't realize all these things because they're unconscious at the time. They don't wake up feeling rested, and that's a good clue. They don't wake up and remember a dream. That's a good clue that something's wrong. So if you have things like that, if you're falling asleep in pretty much any place that you go, that's a sign that your sleep is not where it needs to be. Daily headaches, different things like that can be indicators of it. So there's a lot of different things that can go into this. But just doing something as simple as wearing just a sleep tracker, and it doesn't matter if you use Apple or Garmin or anything like that. I really like the Garmin for multiple reasons on this, because you can track multiple parameters within this. But there's different levels of each one. There's different apps that you can get and whatnot that can help you elucidate some of that. But knowing what your sleep quality is very, very important, because there are ways to improve your sleep quality, right? If you have sleep apnea, there are ways to change that. Diet and exercise make a big difference in a lot of this stuff. Chiropractic care can make a big difference in a lot of this stuff. Movement in general will make a big difference in how you sleep. So there are things that you can do in all of these. Changing your sleep routine is probably the easiest thing to do. So when we talk about sleep, having a routine around it. What time are you going to bed? What time are you waking up? Having a routine about a half an hour before you go to bed, getting into that relaxed state. So maybe doing some stretching, maybe doing some journaling, maybe doing some deep breathing, something that's going to relax you and get you ready to, when you lay down, you fall asleep. And when you fall asleep, you're getting that good quality sleep that when you wake up, you're waking up with the energy and vibrancy that you want to have. Moving on to the energy and fitness. And these two go together. And why do we put these together is because when we get into better shape, we build better energy, right? So ultimately what exercise does is it forces us to, use the substrates that we have in a different way. We're not always reliant on glucose, because it's not the only thing that we can do and still sustain our energy, right? So we have to be able to break down fats and different things like this. We also have to have more mitochondria, those areas of the cell that make energy. So as we get into better and better shape, our body puts more and more mitochondria into our tissues to where we can continue to move forward on that. We can continue to drive those things because we have the energy supply. We have enough power plants. And I guess a good analogy of this was if you look at gas stations. So right now, if you look at electric cars, there aren't a ton of charging stations around, right? They're getting to be more and more frequent, but they're not all over the place like gas stations are. So gas stations can give us that energy that we need to get where we want to go more efficiently. Now, as there's a transition to more electric cars, they're going to put more of those charging stations around, and you'll be able to get where you want to go just as efficiently as gas, theoretically. I mean, I don't know what the long-term plan on that is, but theoretically, they're going to put more of those in, right? Same thing happens here. As we need more energy, we put more mitochondria down. The mitochondria make energy, and that pushes us in that direction to where things are starting to spiral. We have what we need to supply the things that we need. So this is a very, very big one, and it doesn't matter. Like, where should you start? Should you start with weightlifting? Should you start with jogging? Should you start with aerobics classes or water aerobics? It depends on what your goals are, right? Everybody's goals are going to be different. And, if you're looking to to be able to lift your toddler great-grandchildren at 100 years of age, then there's probably going to have to be some level of strength building, right? If you're looking to be able to, walk 5 miles at 100 years of age, there's probably going to have to be some endurance training of some sort. So maybe both of these are going to be a good answer, and I will argue that that is always going to be your best answer, because when we do just one type of exercise, it drives us to be better at that one type of exercise, but it doesn't necessarily give us the flexibility that we need to do other things. So I will always argue for doing more varied types of things, because it's going to take you through different ranges of motion. It's going to help you build different strength in different ways, and ultimately that's what it's all about, is getting as optimized as we can to be in as many different environments as we can and still succeed on reaching our goals. So moving on to the last one, the brain. And the brain is a difficult one, right? Because there's so many things that are involved in this. And the two things that I break the brain down into is, when we are young, we're working on developing as healthy of a brain as possible. So when we're working with kids with ADHD or dyslexia or any of that, we're working on development of the brain. And when we are starting to get older, we're working on protecting the development that we already have. We don't want to see that breakdown. So it kind of shifts at that stage, but they're the same thing in and of themselves, right? We still have about the same focus. So when we look at a brain, and I'm going to draw very poorly here, so just stay with me as we go through this. So if that's your brain, the important parts up here, well, all of it's important, obviously, but this prefrontal cortex up here is going to be very, very important. The parietal cortex is going to be very, very important. Obviously, cerebellum is going to be important. All of these other parts are. But what happens under stress is stress leads to an increase in firing in some of these deep brain structures. So if we imagine that this is a brain that's been cut in half this way, when we look at these deep brain structures down here, they're more of the impulsive things. So they're the things that are, just reflexive. They're just activation, right? So it'd be like your immune activation would be in there. Impulsivity would be in there. So if we see something, we just do it without thinking, that would be in there. Emotionality would be in there. Different things like this are going to be more in these deep structures. And what happens is these upper brain levels that we develop are supposed to counteract these. So they're kind of supposed to come down here and just kind of dampen those down a little bit. And as we start to stress, or as we start to develop, these areas are not there as well. When we look at the heart rate of a baby, the heart rate is about 160 beats per minute, right? As we start to get a little bit more development in that baby, the heart rate starts to come down, where eventually as an adult, we should have it around 60, 70 beats per minute. So that's this upper brain function dampening this down. Now, in development in general, these upper brain areas, these on the outer part of the brain, are the ones that take longer to develop. And this is why you have a toddler that doesn't make good decisions. They just impulsively do stuff, and they can't explain why. They didn't think about it, they just did it. And they don't have this upper brain development yet. When we look at ADHD, when we look at autism, when we look at dyslexia, this is the area of the brain that is not developed as well. Stereotypically, in all of those, we're going to have some sort of decrease in some of these, if not all of these. But both of these areas, they come down and they dampen down that deep brain development. We have to have them functioning together. Now, when we look at adults, it's a different functionality on that. In adults, these areas are still tasked with dampening this down, but as we're under more and more stress, they start to fatigue. As we're getting more and more tired, that's a bigger stress, right? So they start to fatigue. And sooner or later, you can turn off those areas of the brain. If you've ever been really, really tired and you've made a poor decision, that's this. That's how it happens. But it usually doesn't just, it's not just like a going and stop. It's usually just like a gradual decrease in this to where it finally just kind of shuts down, right? This is very important. And when we look at all of this, everything in here comes back to this, because all of these things down here are a stress. If we don't have these things optimized, we cannot have this optimized. So we have to have all of this together. Now, let's shift our focus to the healthcare paradigms that are going to give you the benefit out of all of this. So when we look at the current healthcare paradigm, it's wait until you get sick and then let's deal with it. When we wait until we get sick, what do we have? Our nutrition is stereotypically garbage, right? Like the standard American diet is called SAD for a reason. It's sad because we take in all this inflammatory stuff, and it's not because we necessarily we're just not taught about it. We're pushed in this direction. This is the stuff that is subsidized. This is the stuff that the government pushes towards. This is the stuff that everybody says, eat what you want, you can just take this medication, right? It's not like that. We've got to get the nutrition under control. And that's where that Mediterranean diet can make a big difference for you. When we're looking at sleep, if you don't get enough sleep, you don't have any energy, right? If you don't have any energy, that's ultimately what determines this. Your energy in, or energy created, minus your energy expended gives you how much energy you have left at the end of the day, right? That energy left at the end of the day is very important, because if you don't have any energy left, you shut everything down. You don't run everything. The brain is going to be the last thing that shuts down because it's the most important. But if we don't have any energy left, it can't keep running. So it shuts down, and it may be 2 o'clock in the afternoon that it shuts down. It may be 4:30 in the afternoon. Who knows what time it is? When you run out of energy, that's when it's going to shut down, and that's when you're going to start making mistakes. That's when you're going to start making judgment errors. That's when you start to get that emotionality and all that stuff going on. And it's not a good situation no matter what environment you're in. So energy, in general, is what supplies all this. So we have to have all of this paradigm over here to have proper brain health. So waiting until we're done, waiting until we're sick is not a good approach, because we've already lost these things up here. Now, the approach to adding medications or adding different therapies or different things like that, can it change brain function? Can it change energy function? Can it change metrics in this? Absolutely. But is it an answer? No. It's not ever going to be an answer, because we have to have that neuromusculoskeletal impulse. We have to have movement. We have to have fitness. We have to have energy. We have to have all of these things with that. We have to have, let's say, we have to have neuromusculoskeletal, and we also have to have, the brain function to go with it, right? So movement and movement and the impulses are the things that drive all of this, and that's ultimately what chiropractic care is. So there's not a medication that is going to replace all of these things. There's not a medication that is going to heal all of these things. The only thing the medications are going to do is change. They're going to alter these pathways. Lifestyle and the stimulation are what we need. That's what chiropractic is. When we lay it out into lifestyle and the chiropractic adjustment, it's restoring motion, right? The motion is going to change the neurology. The motion is going to change the inflammation. The motion is going to give you the stimulation to the brain. The motion is what does all of this stuff. The lifestyle has to be there, though, because if we don't have the lifestyle, like I said, we get carried away in inflammation, and all of this goes in the wrong direction. So if you're not getting adjusted on a regular basis, and what is a regular basis? Most studies say, every 3-4 weeks. That's the big thing. Why? Because an adjustment will last you about 10 days on average without injury. You start putting scar tissue down, you start losing that range of motion. When you start losing that range of motion, that's where we start to see inflammation creep in. That's where we start to see all of this stuff fall apart. So in general, they use 3 to 4 weeks as the regular chiropractic care. The longer you're under the care, the more all of this stuff stacks together, because the less degeneration you're going to have, or the less degeneration you're likely to have, the more stimulation you're going to have to the brain. What areas does the chiropractic adjustment stimulate? The parietal lobe, the frontal lobe, different things like that are two of the biggest targets of the chiropractic adjustment. And it's pretty crazy that that's actually what it does. But this is how it resets the stress system, and it gets your brain back in control of that impulsivity, of that emotionality, of all that other stuff. It resets it. So if it's turned off, if you're down here and you've kind of worn down, and those areas of the brain have just kind of turned off, this sets it. It's like the breaker. If you flipped a breaker, we have to flip the breaker back on to get the power back to the outlet. Same thing here. That's what we're doing with that adjustment, is we're stimulating that. So if you have questions on this, I know this is a long video. If you have questions on this, throw them in the comments, reach out through direct message, whatever you need to do. But let's get you moving in a better direction. And if you're not under chiropractic care, then I will argue all day long. And you're going to say, I have a vested interest in that. And there is no doubt that that is true. But I firmly believe with every part of my being that this is the only way that people are ever going to get health. This is the only way that we're ever going to change the outcomes that we're getting. Why have we had, 75, 100 years, whatever it's been, of medicine being the approach? And are we doing better in some of those numbers? Are we doing better in parameters? Yes. People are having less cholesterol. Are they having less heart disease? No. Are they having less heart attacks? No. Are they dying from less heart attacks? Maybe. But that's not the only thing that we have to do on this. We have to change where we're going, because if we don't change where we're going, we're spending trillions of dollars a year on a system that's not working. Think about that. If you were spending all of this money, if you spent hundreds of thousands of dollars a month on a system that wasn't working for you, if you had subscriptions to Netflix and things like that, and it cost you $100,000 a month, would you continue down that path? Yet that's what we're doing every single day in our healthcare system. We're spending more and more money, and people argue that we need more money thrown at it. How much more money do you need? If it was going to work, the money's there. The money has been tried. We've increased it over and over and over again. It gets more and more expensive, astronomically more expensive every single year. If it was going to work, it will be working. We've got to change the mindset. And the only people that are going to get this done are you, me, the people down here that can make the decisions, because nobody is going to change this for us. We have to make that decision. So again, as always, I appreciate your attention. I appreciate you taking the time. Like I said, I know this is a long video, and I just appreciate you taking the time to watch it. So if you have questions, drop them in there. Otherwise, I hope you have a great week, and I'll catch you on next week's video.